Our story this morning begins in a garden. It begins in a garden where the sky is as dark and black and rich as the soil. It's the first day of the week in that garden. And Mary Magdalene, you may recall this is not Mary from Magdala. This is Mary the Magdala, Mary the Tower. Mary, the dearest friend and most beloved companion in ministry to Jesus in the Gospel of John. Mary Magdalene has come to the garden where the sky is as dark and black and rich as the soil. And she comes to where the tomb has been hewn from a rock. And squinting through that dark, black, rich sky, standing in the dark, black, rich soil, she notices the stone that was sitting in front of the opening of that tomb that was hewn in the rock seems to be gone, rolled away. The tomb is open. Mary, the Tower, the dearest friend and most beloved companion in ministry for Jesus, sees that his body is perhaps gone. And it is too much. It is too much for her to bear all alone. Never mind what it means or what happened. It is just too much for her to comprehend and process. And she needs others to hold this story with her. So she goes. She goes and she finds Simon Peter and another disciple whom Jesus also loved. And she tells them, his body is gone. And so they run. And the other disciple whom Jesus loved gets there first, and he stoops down and looks in, and indeed sees grave cloths just lying there on their own. And then Simon Peter arrives next. He also stoops down, but then he goes a little further. He enters in, and indeed, there is no body. There's only grave cloths lying there. The other disciple, whom Jesus loved, follows him in, and it tells us in John that he saw, too, the grave clothes, and he believed. Now, what he believed, who's to say? For in the very next sentence, John tells us they did not understand. They come out from the tomb, stooping back through the opening, and they return home. And so we're still in the garden. The garden where the sky is not quite so dark and black and rich as the soil, but is starting to hint at a growing light. And Mary, the Tower, Mary Magdala, Mary, the dearest friend and closest companion to Jesus in his ministry, stands facing the tomb, weeping. Directly facing the emptiness, the void, the sorrow, the suffering, the loss. Mary stands in her grief, facing the tomb, weeping. And then she stoops to look in. And she sees two figures, two strange-looking figures, otherworldly sort of figures. One sitting at either end where Jesus' body had once been. And these, we might call them heavenly messengers, these two don't tell her a single thing ever in the whole story. They ask her one question. Woman, why are you weeping? Why are you weeping? She is met facing the tomb with a question, with compassion, with empathy, with an invitation to tell the truth about her sorrow. And she says, Mary the Magdala, Mary the Tower, Jesus' dearest friend and closest companion in ministry, they have taken my teacher, my friend, my beloved, the Messiah, because you may remember that Mary, the Tower, is the only one in all of the Gospel of John to speak aloud that Jesus is in fact the Messiah. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's Peter the Rock. John, it's Mary the Tower, even though an early editor tried to break it up and turn her into Martha and Mary too. And if you want to hear more about this, there's an older sermon I can point you to. Mary, they have taken the Messiah, the one. They have taken his body after he was already executed, and now this cruelty upon cruelties, they have taken his body, and I don't know where they have laid him. And then there is something, as many of us probably know from our own experience, there is something about Mary having been met with that question and that invitation to tell the truth of her grief and her sorrow and her suffering. The opportunity to speak it aloud and have another one hear and listen and bear witness. There is something about that that gives her just enough strength to begin to turn. And John tells us that she turned, facing the garden of the dark, black, rich soil and the light growing in the sky. And she sees another figure in the garden. This one pretty clearly human, so must be the gardener, standing there in that deep, dark, rich, black soil. The gardener. She doesn't have to squint quite as much. There's a little more light in the sky. It does clearly look like it should be the gardener. And the gardener says to her, doesn't say, asks, woman, why do you weep? She is again met with compassion and with empathy and with an invitation to share the truth of her sorrow and her grief and her suffering. But you know what? She's already named it, and someone has already borne witness to it. And so she doesn't need that in that moment. And in fact, this is the first human she's seen all day. Other than Simon Peter and the other disciple whom Jesus loved, who she went to get and came with her, but she knows they're not involved in this nonsense, right? This is the first human she sees. And woman, why do you weep? And she says, sir, gardener, If you are the one who took the body that was in this tomb, if you are the one who took the body of my teacher, my beloved, my friend, my rabbi, my Messiah, if you are the one who took the body, would you please just tell me wherever it is that you took that body, and I will go and I will attend to the body. And the gardener looks her in the eye and says, Mary. There was something about his voice that had seemed familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. And no, she did not tell this gardener her name, so how does this one know her name? But more to the point, her name in that voice, she has heard 1,000 times from her dearest friend and her most beloved companion in ministry. And so, though it can't be true, it is. It is Jesus. Somehow, it is Jesus. And then Jesus does say something to her. He speaks to her and he says, do not hold on to me. And so that gives us a clue that when Mary said, Rabboni, my beloved teacher and dearest friend and closest companion in ministry, that when she said that, she went to him. Of course she went to him. Of course she went to him. Holding on, clinging for all she's worth. Many of us know this too, don't we? Someone we've lost or we think we've lost. We get a visitation, a moment, and we want to cling to that moment. Oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, Jesus, can we just build a tabernacle here, a tent here on the top of the mountain of transfiguration and stay here forever? Can we just stay? But Jesus says, do not hold on to me, for I have more to do, and you have more to do. Jesus says, this story is not over. The story is not over. You must go. You must go to my brothers and to my sisters and to my siblings. You must go. This story is not over. What story? What story? Well, it's a story that's old as time and new every day. It is God's oldest story. It is God's forever story. It is the story of liberating love. It is the story of shalom, of a just peace for all creation. It is God's liberation and love. It is an old story. It is a new everyday story. It is a forever story told in this new way through the life and ministry and teaching and witness and way of Jesus. This story is not over. And so she goes. Mary Magdalene, Mary the Magdala, Mary the Tower, known for 2,000 plus years in tradition as the apostle to the apostles. You've heard that before? She is the one who is sent to send others. She is the first sent one, apostle, sent to the brothers, sisters, siblings of Jesus, who are then also sent. So I have 2 bits of good news for y'all this morning, this Easter Sunday morning. You've just heard the first. The story's still not over. God's liberating love, that story, that story is not over. And here's the second bit of good news. The story is for you. If you are standing at a tomb, standing in your grief and facing your emptiness and the void and sorrow and suffering and loss, if you are standing at the tomb, this story is for you. If you perhaps have just been given opportunity to speak to some of what feels so broken and hard in you, and you're just beginning to turn toward the deep, dark, black, rich soil of the growing garden, if you are just starting to turn, this story is for you. If you are in a moment of bliss, if when we say Christ is risen, oh, you feel it. Christ is risen indeed. If you are hanging on to God, this story is for you. And if you've been sent, if you know your purpose in life and your mission, if you are at a moment in your life where your vocation is clear and you have a clear sense and, life is good and exciting and there's work to be done, this story is for you. And all those positions, those are just Mary the Tower. She's just one. I mean, she's an important one, but she's just one. This is a thing I like to think about. So here we are in this room. Actually, one of you was just talking about travel recently. Okay, here we go. Diversion, real quick. Sometimes I like to imagine, and let's see what comes to mind. The Aran Islands off the coast of Ireland. So I had the great pleasure of being able to travel there with John and my brother Justin. And sometimes I like to think like that place exists right now. Like right now, it's there. And there are humans there. I had the great gift of being able to catch a glimpse of it for one day. But right at this moment, that still exists, right? So wherever that is for you, close or far, it could be, I don't know, Camp Camrick. There are creatures that are there right now. That place exists. Venice. You've been to Venice? Whoo, that's a city. That place exists. And there are humans and creatures that are roaming the streets right now, right? It is infinite. Even here we are in this room. And there are people around the corner in Valor Apartments and McDermott Place. There are people around this corner sitting in Kaffee Klatsch having their coffee and their pastry, right? All these people around us as we are gathered in this room. Mary the Tower in the garden, with the deep, dark, black, rich soil and the deep, dark, black, rich sky slowly growing with light. There are disciples all around. And so, if you're eating breakfast just down the road and you are plotting a revolution against Rome for what they did to Jesus a couple days ago, this story is for you. If you're down this path and you're still in bed, sleeping, or just lying there, sunk in depression, not sure if you're ever going to be able to get out of that bed again for what they did to your friend, this story is for you. If you betrayed him, this story is for you. If you denied him, this story is for you. If you ran away from the cross, scared, and didn't say anything to anyone out of fear, this story is for you. So, good news this Easter Sunday morning. Story's not over. The story of God's liberating love that is as old as time and new every day and forever, told newly in this way of Jesus. That story is still not over. And secondly, the story is for you. Indeed, may we all be caught up in the story of God's liberating love, new every day. Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Amen.